Good evening. It's 5 p.m. It starts getting dark. I'm freezing a little bit and tired, like always. 5 p.m. I did read about Airbus 330 Neo. The Neo. But I think I should... that's the Neo. I should have read the old 330. The old one, so I like to do that now before I get too tired. Then I will make a video about it later in my language, Danish.
Airbus A330. A330 redirects here. For other uses, see A330, disambiguation. For the new engine option variant, see Airbus A330 Neo. The Airbus A330 is a wide-body aircraft developed and produced by Airbus. Airbus began developing larger A300 derivatives in the mid-1970s, giving rise to the A330 twinjet as well as the Airbus A340 quadjet, and launched both designs along with their first orders in June 1987. The A330-300, the first variant, took its maiden flight in November 1992 and entered service with Air Inter in January 1994. The A330-200, a shortened longer-range variant, followed in 1998 with Canada 3000 as the launch operator. The A330 shares many underpinnings with the airframe of the earlier 340 variants, most notably the same wing components, and by extension the same structure. However, the A330 has two main landing gear legs instead of three, lower weights, and slightly different fuselage lengths. Both airliners have fly-by-wire controls as well as a similar glass cockpit to increase the commonality. The A330 was Airbus's first airliner to offer a choice of three engines, the General Electric CF6, Pratt & Whitney PW4000, or the Rolls-Royce Trent 700. The A330-300 has a range of 11,750 kilometers, 6,314 mi, 7,300 mi, with 277 passengers, while the shorter A330-200 can cover 13,450 kilometers, 7,216 mi, 8,360 mi, with 247 passengers. Other variants include the A330-200F dedicated freighter, the A330 MRTT military tanker, and the ACJ330 corporate jet. The A330 MRTT was proposed as the EADS/Northrop Grumman KC-45 for the U.S. Air Force's KC-X competition, but lost to the Boeing KC-46 in appeal after an initial win. In July 2014, Airbus announced the re-engined A330 Neo, new engine option, comprising a 330-800 and -900, which entered service with TAP Air Portugal in December 2018. With the exclusive, more efficient Trent 7000 turbofan and improvements including sharklets, it offers up to 14% better fuel economy per seat. The first generation A330S, -200, -200F, and -300, are now called A330ceo, current engine option. Delta Airlines is the largest operator with 74 airplanes in its fleet as of January 2025. A total of 1,863 orders have been placed for the A330 family, of which 1,623 have been delivered and 1,461 are in service with 149 operators. The global A330 fleet had accumulated more than 65 million flight hours since its entry into service. The A330 is the second most delivered wide-body airliner after the Boeing 777. It competes with the Boeing 767 and the 787. It is complemented by the larger Airbus A350, which succeeded the four-engined A340. As of June 2024, the Airbus A330 has been involved in 46 aviation accidents and incidents, including 14 hull losses, 10 due to flight-related accidents and 4 due to criminal-related accidents, for a total of 339 fatalities. Development, edit. Background, edit. Airbus's first airliner, the A300, was envisioned as part of a diverse family of commercial aircraft. Pursuing this goal, studies began in the early 1970s into derivatives of the A300. Before introducing the A300, Airbus identified 9 possible variations designated B1 through B9. A 10th variant, the A300 B10, was conceived in 1973 and developed into the longer-range Airbus A310. Airbus then focused its efforts on single-aisle (SA) studies, conceiving a family of airliners later known as the Airbus A320 family, the first commercial aircraft with digital fly-by-wire controls. During these studies, Airbus turned its focus back to the wide-body aircraft market, simultaneously working on both projects. In the mid-1970s, Airbus began development of the A300 B9, a larger derivative of the A300, which would eventually become the A330. The B9 was essentially a lengthened A300 with the same wing, coupled with the most powerful turbofan engines available. It was targeted at the growing demand for high-capacity, medium-range, transcontinental trunk routes. Offering the same range and payload as the McDonnell Douglas DC-10 but with 25% better fuel efficiency, the B-9 was seen as a viable replacement for the DC-10 and the Lockheed L-1011 TriStar trijets. It was also considered as a medium-ranged successor to the A300. At the same time, a 200-seat four-engine version, the B-11, which would eventually become the A340, was also under development. The B-11 was originally planned to take the place of narrow-body Boeing 707s and Douglas DC-8s then in commercial use, but would later evolve to target the long-range, wide-body trijet replacement market. To differentiate from the SA series, the B-9 and B-11 were redesignated as the TAR-9 and TAR-11, with TAR standing for twin-aisle. Development costs were reduced by the two aircraft using the same fuselage and wing, with projected savings of $500 million. Another factor was the split preference of those within Airbus and, more importantly, those of prospective customers. Twinjets were favored in North America, quadjets desired in Asia, and operators had mixed views in Europe. Airbus ultimately found that most potential customers favored four engines for their exemption from existing twinjet range restrictions and their ability to be ferried with one inactive engine. As a result, development plans prioritized the four-engine TAR-11 ahead of the TAR-9. Design effort, edit. The first specifications for the TAR-9 and TAR-11, aircraft that could accommodate 410 passengers in a one-class layout, emerged in 1982. They showed a large underfloor cargo area that could hold 5 cargo pallets or 16 LD3 cargo containers in the forward, and 4 pallets or 14 LD3s in the aft hold. double the capacity of the Lockheed L-1011 TriStar or DC-10, and 8.46 meters, 27.8 feet, longer than the Airbus A330. By June 1985, the TAR-9 and TAR-11 had received more improvements, including the adoption of the A320 flight deck, digital fly-by-wire, FBW, control system, and side stick control. Airbus had developed a common cockpit for their aircraft models to allow quick transition by pilots. The flight crews could transition from one type to another after only 1 week's training, which reduces operator costs. The two TARs would use the vertical stabilizer, rudder, and circular fuselage sections of the A300-600, extended by two barrel sections. Airbus briefly considered the variable camber wing, a concept that requires changing the wing profile for a given phase of flight. Studies were carried out by British Aerospace, BAE, now part of BAE Systems, at Hatfield and Bristol. Airbus estimated this would yield a 2% improvement in aerodynamic efficiency, but the feature was rejected because of cost and difficulty of development. A true laminar flow wing, a low-drag shape that improves fuel efficiency, was also considered but rejected. With necessary funding available, the Airbus Supervisory Board approved the development of the A330 and A340 with potential customers on the 27th of January, 1986. Its chairman Franz Joseph Strauss stated afterwards that Airbus industry is now in a position to finalize the detailed technical definition of the TAR-9, now officially designated as the A330, and the TAR-11, now called the A340, with potential launch customer airlines, and to discuss with them the terms and conditions for launch commitments. The designations were originally reversed and were switched so the quadjet airliner would have A4 in its name. Airbus hoped for 5 airlines to sign for both the A330 and A340, and on the 12th of May sent sale proposals to the most likely candidates, including Lufthansa and Swissair. Engines, edit. From the beginning of the TAR-9's development, a choice of engines from the 3 major engine manufacturers, Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney, and GE Aviation, was planned. GE Aviation first offered the CF6-80C2. However, later studies indicated that more thrust was needed to increase the initial power capability from 267 to 289 kN, 60,000 to 65,000 lbf. GE enlarged the CF6-80C2 fan from 236 to 244 cm, 92.9 to 96.1 in, and reduced the number of fan blades from 38 to 34 to create the CF6-80E1 with a thrust of 320 kN, 67,00072,000 lbf. 1. Rolls-Royce Trent 700 features a mixed exhaust. 2. Pratt & Whitney's PW4000 has a more conventional unmixed exhaust. 3. The GE CF6 also has an unmixed exhaust, but adds a pointed exhaust cone. Rolls-Royce initially wanted to use the 267 kN, 60,000 lbf, Trent 600 to power Airbus's newest twinjet and the upcoming McDonnell Douglas MD-11. However, the company later agreed to develop an engine solely for the A330, the Trent 700, with a larger diameter and 311 kN, 69,900 lbf, of thrust. The A330 became the first Airbus aircraft for which Rolls-Royce supplied engines. Similarly, Pratt & Whitney signed an agreement that covered the development of the A330 exclusive PW4168. The company increased the fan size from 94 in, 2.39 m, to 100 in 2.54 m, enabling the engine to deliver 311 kN, 69,900 lbf, of thrust. Like the CF6-80E1, 34 blades were used instead of the 38 found on the smaller PW4000 engines. Production and testing, edit. In preparation for the production of the A330 and the A340, Airbus's partners invested heavily in new facilities. In southwestern England, BAE made a £7 million investment in a three-storey technical centre with 15,000 m, 161,000 square feet, of floor area at Filton. In North Wales, BAE also spent £5 million on a new production line at its Broughton wing production plant. In Germany, Messerschmitt Bölkow Blohm, MBB, invested DM $400 million, $225 million, on manufacturing facilities in the Weser estuary, including at Bremen, Einsiedeln, Werl, and Hamburg. France saw the biggest investments, with Aerospatiale constructing a new further $2.5 billion, $411 million, final assembly plant adjacent to Toulouse-Blagnac Airport in Colomiers. By November 1988, the pillars for the new Clementador assembly hall had been erected. The assembly process featured increased automation, such as robots drilling holes and installing fasteners during the wing-to-fuselage mating process. On the 12th of March 1987, Airbus received the first orders for the twinjet. Domestic French airline Air Inter placed 5 firm orders and 15 options, while Thai Airways International requested 8 aircraft, split evenly between firm orders and options. Airbus announced the next day that it would formally launch the A330 and A340 programs by April 1987, with deliveries of the A340 to begin in May 1992 and A330 deliveries to start in 1993. Northwest Airlines signed a letter of intent for 20 A340s and 10 A330s on the 31st of March. In 2001, the program cost with the A340 was $3.5 billion, equivalent to $5.75 billion in 2023. BAE eventually received £450 million of funding from the UK government, well short of the £750 million it had originally requested for the design and construction of the wings. The German and French governments also provided funding. Airbus issued subcontracts to companies in Australia, Austria, Canada, China, Greece, Italy, India, Japan, South Korea, Portugal, the United States, and the former Yugoslavia. With funding in place, Airbus launched the A330 and A340 programs on the 5th of June 1987, just before the Paris Air Show. At that time, the order book stood at 130 aircraft from 10 customers, including Lessor International Lease Finance Corporation, ILFC. Of the order total, 41 were for A330s. In 1989, Asian carrier Cathay Pacific joined the list of purchasers, ordering 9 A330s and later increasing this number to 11. The wing-to-fuselage mating of the first A330, the 10th airframe of the A330 and A340 line, began in mid-February 1992. This aircraft, coated with anti-corrosion paint, was rolled out on the 31st of March without its General Electric CF6-80E1 engines, which were installed by August. During a static test, the wing failed just below requirement. BAE engineers later resolved the problem. At the 1992 Farnborough Air Show, Northwest deferred delivery of 16 A330s to 1994, following the cancellation of its A340 orders. The first completed A330 was rolled out on the 14th of October, 1992, with the maiden flight following on the 2nd of November. Weighing 181,840 kilograms, 401,000 pound, including 20,980 kilograms, 46,300 pound, of test equipment, the A330 became the largest twinjet to have flown until the first flight of the Boeing 777. The flight lasted 5 hours and 15 minutes, during which speed, height, and other flight configurations were tested. Airbus intended the test flight program to comprise 6 aircraft flying a total of 1,800 hours. On the 21st of October, 1993, the A330 received the European Joint Aviation Authorities, JAA, and the US Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, certifications simultaneously after 1,114 cumulative airborne test hours and 426 test flights. At the same time, weight tests came in favorable, showing the plane was 500 kilograms, 1,100 pound, underweight. On the 30th of June, 1994, a fatal crash occurred during certification of the Pratt & Whitney engine when an A330 crashed near Toulouse. Both pilots and the 5 passengers died. The flight was designed to test autopilot response during a one-engine off worst-case scenario with the center of gravity near its aft limit. Shortly after takeoff, the pilots had difficulty setting the autopilot, and the aircraft lost speed and crashed. An investigation by an internal branch of Direction Générale d'Aviation concluded that the accident resulted from slow response and incorrect actions by the crew during the recovery. This led to a revision of A330 operating procedures. Entry into service, edit. Air Inter became the first operator of the A330, having put the aircraft into service on the 17th of January, 1994 between Orly Airport, Paris, and Marseille. Deliveries to Malaysia Airlines, MAS, and Thai Airways International were postponed to address delamination of the composite materials in the PW4168 engine's thrust reverser assembly. Thai Airways received its first A330 during the second half of the year, operating it on routes from Bangkok to Taipei and Seoul. Cathay Pacific received its Trent 700 A330s following the certification of that engine on the 22nd of December, 1994. MAS received its A330 on the 1st of February, 1995 and then rescheduled its other 10 orders. Its initial range was around 4,000 nautical miles, but subsequent refinements increased the range of newer models to 5,000 nautical miles, and by 2015, the range was 6,100 nautical miles. Shrinking the -300, the -200, edit. In response to a decline in A330-300 sales, increased market penetration by the Boeing 767-300 and airline requests for increased range and smaller aircraft, Airbus developed the A330-200. Known as the A329 and A330M10 during development, the A330-200 would offer 9% lower operating costs than the Boeing 767-300. The plane was aimed at the 11,900 kilometers, 6,413 mi, 7,390 mi sector, where Airbus predicted demand for 800 aircraft between 1995 and 2015. The project, with $450 million in expected development costs, was approved by the Airbus Industry Supervisory Board on the 24th of November, 1995. Canada 3000 was the A330-200's launch operator in April 1998. The A330-200 first flew on the 13th of August, 1997. The 16-month certification process involved logging 630 hours of test flights. The A330-200's first customer was ILFC. These aircraft were leased by Canada 3000, who became the type's first operator. As Airbus worked on its A330-200, hydraulic pump problems were reported by both A330 and A340 operators. This issue was the suspected cause of a fire that destroyed an Air France A340-200 in January 1994. On the 4th of January of that year, a Malaysia Airlines A330-300, while undergoing regular maintenance at Singapore Changi Airport, was consumed by a fire that started in the right-hand main undercarriage well. The incident caused $30 million in damage, and the aircraft took 6 months to repair. Consequently, operators were advised to disable electrical pumps in January 1997. Proposed variants, edit. A330-400/600. In 1996, Airbus evaluated a 12-frame stretch which would be able to carry 380 passengers over almost 7,000 kilometers, 3,800 mi, 4,300 mi, the -400, and a superstretch using the A340-600's 22-frame stretch and powered by 400 kN, 90,000 lbf, engines, the -600. A330-100/500. In February 2000, it was reported that a 250-seater A330-100 replacement for the A300/A310 could be launched by year-end for 2003 deliveries. Shortened and keeping its fly-by-wire cockpit and systems, with a cleaner A300-600 wing with sealed control surfaces and winglets and at least 2 new engine types among the GECF6-80, the PW4000 and the A340-500/600's Trent 500, aimed for 5% better SFC than the A300-600. Its 44.8 m, 147 feet, wing allowed a 173 t, 381,000 pound, tow and 4,200 mi, 7,770 kilometers, 4,830 mi, range. In May, the 210 to 260 seat design had evolved towards keeping the A330 60.3 m, 198 feet, span wing and engines for a 195 t tow and 4,500 mi, 8,300 kilometers, 5,200 mi, range. Interested customers included Singapore Airlines, Lufthansa and Hapag-Lloyd. Announced in July at Farnborough Air Show, the -500 first flight was targeted for early 2003 and introduction in early 2004. ILFC would take 10 if it was launched and CIT was interested too. The 8-frame shrink would carry 222 in 3 classes or 266 in 2 classes. Its initial 13,000 kilometers, 7,000 mi, 8,100 mi, range would be followed by derated versions for 8,000 kilometers, 4,300 mi, 5,000 mi. The market was lukewarm as airlines like Lufthansa, Hapag-Lloyd and Singapore Airlines were unimpressed by the long-range A330-500, favoring a more refined short-range design. Lack of airline demand made lessors' interest wane, and as ILFC would order as 30-500s, it would be with converting rights to larger A330-200/300. A330-200 Lite. To compete with Boeing's 787, Later 787, Airbus offered a minimum change derivative called the A330-200 Lite in 2004. As the name indicated, this proposed variant would have had a lower maximum takeoff weight of 202 tons, 445,000 pounds, coupled with derated engines, giving a range of 7,400 kilometers, 4,000 mi, 4,600 mi. It was aimed at Singapore Airlines, who had looked to replace its Airbus A310-300S. The variant was also to be a replacement for